The Taunting Hour? Oh my god, this episode from the Loud House sucks. I'll give you the reasons why I hate this episode in my opinion. It is basically proves that the writers behind the show see criticism as always a bad thing, as the entire episode tries to make even the slightest bit of criticism look bad, devilish and pure evil. Along with that overly exaggerated idea, the episode teaches an awful moral to its audience. If someone is criticizing you, whether constructive or more blunt, ignore them, which is not a good idea at all, since criticism, although it can be nasty depending on how you state your criticism, can be a beneficial process in the case of constructive criticism, that is. But the sad truth is that this episode just does nothing but paint all criticism in a very bad light, which is not going to help anyone. People need to take criticism to either step up the quality of their own efforts on what they are good at, otherwise people won't learn anything from the tips or criticism they are given. Almost everyone in this episode, except for Lenny, Lucy, Lana, and Lily, are unlikable in this episode for different reasons. Lincoln is unlikable here. His way of avoiding criticism from everyone else only made things worse. He even fails to see the disappointment and cries in his family's eyes at the dinner table. Which of course, portrays Lincoln as a terrible role model in this episode. Lynn Sr., Rita, Lola, Lisa, Luna, Luan and Lynn become very unlikable in the last few minutes of the episode by blaming Lincoln for telling them about their critics, even though he tried to help them and that he never said that he agreed with them. They even called him a life ruiner. However, Lynn Sr. does get his karma in the ending. The flashbacks where Chandler relentlessly taunts and mocks his archenemy Lincoln for literally no reason are unnecessarily mean-spirited, and they make him more likely a really bad kid and a bad person in general. He's so bad, he earns the title of being an unfunny version of Bart Simpson. Sure, Bart Simpson is a kid who taunts and plays impractical pranks and jokes on other people, but most of the time, he never acts so jerkish to the point of being unreasonably taunting and insulting. The bullies the Ludes receive make no sense at all. Let's mention that Scoots is really unlikable in this episode. She discourages Lynn Jr. by saying "Boo. You stink," instead of giving her constructive criticism by encouraging her. If Scoots didn't do this, then either she would not have appeared in this episode or this whole episode would have no plot. Also, if Lynn didn't like Scoots insulting her, she could have just kicked the soccer ball onto her face. Sure, it would get her eliminated out of the game, but at least she's shutting her up. Also, it would have made more sense if Hank and Hawk were Lynn's bullies instead of Scoots. The burnt bean manager insults Luna, even though she just hired her. What's even stranger is that given by her similar resemblance to Sam, she could technically be insulting her daughter's girlfriend, and it somewhat would make even less sense, even though it is unconfirmed if that character would be Sam's mother, or just someone else that is not related to Sam Sharp, and the animators made this choice for some odd reason. It would have made more sense if it was Michelle and or Doug insulting Luna, considering the fact they are more arrogant and belittling to everyone they know than one character whom we've just met. Mr. Grouse insults Lynn Sr. for his cooking, even though he liked his cooking in earlier episodes, because inconsistency has to occur in favor of a forced lowbrow joke that wasn't even funny. Again, it would have made more sense if it was either Lord Tetherby, Steak Stanko, or even Principal Huggins insulting him instead of Mr. Grouse. Luan, Lisa, Rita, and Lola freezing up doesn't make sense either. Luan used to have a rough audience when she was little, so she managed to develop thick skin over the years. So why doesn't she have it right now? Lisa's faced a rough audience also back in School of Shock, so she shouldn't have problems either. Rita has been criticized by her own kids several times in the past. So how on earth could a random person on the internet make a mother of 11 kids freeze up? Lola, while less problematic, could have beaten her bully up. While it's possible it will be bad for her reputation, at least she's standing up for herself. Not to mention, having only one hater is something all the other characters would have is easy to deal with, since all you have to do is ignore them and look on the positive sides of life. Which we guess is impossible in this episode because of its childish writing and its overly negative tone. And Luan's hater your underscore not underscore funny underscore 123, yes, that's their name, only comments not funny. That is not a realistic representation, portrayal of what haters are. That's a blatant stereotype that everyone has already seen before. It can be funny in most occasions, but here, it falls flat because it's not how a hater is portrayed at all. Continuing from that, all the haters act so bland and not so hater-like in any way. In real life, haters can be more nasty, aggressive, mean-spirited, livid, hot-tempered, and act more like bigger bullies that think they know everything when they don't, and sometimes, they say some obscene language like profanity and sometimes slurs just to make them look good. And yes, we know a show like this wouldn't say slurs, but it's still very unrealistic, considering that those haters are this calm. Shouldn't it be easier to ignore and enjoy what you like? And most of these haters were in public places, so wouldn't someone call them out for their behavior? Of course not, because those haters don't get disciplined or reprimanded for the way they insult or make fun of other people like that. Lenny, Lucy, and Lana for some reason don't have a hater, indicating the writers forgot about them. Speaking of which, Lenny, Lucy, and Lana do absolutely nothing in this episode but to serve as background characters. None of them even tried to help the insulted Ludes feel better after hearing about their bullies. They don't even comfort Lincoln when he is scolded either. The plot is ridiculous and barely goes along in a good way, just moving from a stupid plot point to the next one. Wasted potential. The concept of the episode could have been executed really well and would have taught the viewers how to deal with criticism the right way, but that failed horribly and sadly thanks to the episode's childish and improper way of doing a good job on the subject matter, and for being one of those episodes talking down to its audience and how it shouts out "slam the critics" every 3 seconds. There were so many missed opportunities for old antagonists and/or jerks from previous episodes to be better bullies towards the Ludes. For example, it could have been Hank and/or Hawk vs. Lynn, Stan Stanko vs. Lynn Sr., Doug and/or Michelle vs. Luna. Its plot and moral is copied from No Laughing Matter. And half-bad ending, Lynn Sr. blocks his ears from Mr. Grouse, who then tells him he left the car parked incorrectly, which only shows that criticism can be good. And now, all the Ludes think to just ignore criticism. Thanks a lot, Lincoln. And that's how the episode goes. Thank God I never watched this episode and I never will, or else it would have wasted my time. I don't know who likes this episode, so I'm just going to leave it be. Who hates this episode? L Fray. After all, he's the one who requested me this rant. So screw the taunting hour, and screw Frame on you. Note: if you like this episode, I'm fine with your opinion. Anyways, Can't Hardly Wait is 390,000 times better than the taunting hour. End of rant.